Welcome to Honest Money, your best guide to financial freedom. I'm Warren Ingram, the author of a few best-selling books, and I'm also an award-winning financial planner, and I've helped thousands of people on their journey to financial freedom. I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I am here to share my experience and the best ideas that I've learned, and I hope these ideas help you on your journey to financial freedom. Honest Money is proudly sponsored by OutSurance. If you're questioning how much you're paying on your life insurance, make sure you SMS LIFE to 30165. Not only will OutSurance call you back to discuss your death, disability, and critical illness cover needs, you'll also get a quote to match your unique circumstances. OutSurance, you always get something out. OutSurance Life is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's apply. 50 cents per SMS. Welcome to Honest Money podcast. It's wonderful to have my guest. I'm gonna tease you a bit to tell you who it is, but this is one of South Africa's big entertainers. He's an incredibly busy man. You know, I remember listening to him on radio and following him and watching him on TV, and I'm going to admit that I wasn't a follower on the music, but I've been listening now, and it's really enjoying some of your stuff, and a radio DJ. And then for people who don't know, he can do all of that in more than one language. So welcome to ProVerb. Thanks so much for joining us.
Wow, Warren, thank you so much for that incredibly kind intro. I really do appreciate it, and it's good to be chatting to you.
So for probably the one listener in South Africa who doesn't know you, can you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Sure. My name is Tebogo, ProVerb Thekisho, ProVerb being my stage name and probably how I am best known. I am host and co-producer of South African Idols. I also have a radio show, as you mentioned. I'm on Fridays and Saturdays at the Kaya FM. And other than that, I'm a father of 2 bundles of joy, and I'm an entrepreneur, an investor. I'm very big into property, and I'm a speaker and writer.
I feel like I'm underachieving in my life already, and we haven't even started.
Well, it's funny you say that. I feel like I actually just do one thing on different platforms. I just talk a lot. That's it.
That's fantastic. So Honest Money is trying to share our money experiences with the person listening, and trying to get them, to take some kind of hints, and if they can glean a nugget out of a conversation like this, I feel like it's worthwhile. So for you, what was money like when you were growing up?
For me, money wasn't discussed at all in my family growing up. As far as I knew, it was just a very scarce commodity. Every time you wanted something, the first response you always get was, "We don't have money. There isn't money. We don't have money." But my parents were forward thinkers, and my mom was very fond of paying stuff ahead and paying off accounts and paying my school fees ahead when she could. So that was probably like my biggest lesson from my mom as far as money was concerned.
Amazing. And was that something that she would discuss with you, or it was just something that you noticed happening?
No, she never discussed it much with me, but I definitely picked up on it. Even when I was in tertiary, I know she would pay my student card. You see, you could load money in there for meals, and she would try and put as much in there ahead of time as possible, and my fees ahead of time. So we never really discussed it, her and I, but I definitely noticed that, and it definitely influenced my own habits now.
Amazing. And so one of the things we love to talk about on the show is financial freedom, and for everybody, I think financial freedom means something different. For you, what does financial freedom look like?
I think it's almost self-defining. If you're not hostage to money, and you're not sort of living hand to mouth, that for me, I think is freedom. If there's some kind of room to breathe, and you can enjoy yourself, and by that I mean you command your time. If you feel like you want to take the week off, and your world won't fall apart. That for me is freedom, and finances play a big part in enabling that freedom.
It's incredible. I mean, I agree. I think, for me, if you're not, it's not always just for employees of companies, but if you're not a slave to your next paycheck or to your next bond repayment, where you can have choice and you can decide what and how you want to spend your time, for me, that's probably the ultimate, the ultimate form of freedom. And I guess money becomes an enabler rather than a burden.
Absolutely. And I think it goes without saying that this outbreak and subsequent lockdown has really tested this whole theory to say, how free were you really? Because now that there isn't a constant income, now that our income streams are all interrupted on some level, shape or form, and whether you're able to survive is kind of informed by how well prepared you were and how financially free potentially you were as well.
Yeah, and we always talk about things like having an emergency fund and saying to people, I've always struggled for a great example to anybody who's, let's say, somewhere around sort of 20 to 50 years old, because as a generation from 20 to 50, people haven't really experienced global financial hardship like we're seeing now. And so saying to someone, look, put aside 3 months of expenses or 6 months of expenses for things that you can't foresee for when the world or when life happens, and the world has now given us an incredible example. Unfortunately, not a great example. It's a horrible situation. But I think that's what the whole COVID outbreak has shown people is, you could have the best life and the best plans and everything's on track. Somewhere the flu arrives on another side of the world and it wipes out your business for no fault of your own, and that's the point. I guess that's what you're saying. That's when you realize whether you are financially free or not.
Absolutely, I think you couldn't have said it better. I've also been preaching not just putting money away, but diversifying. As an entertainer, I'm a big advocate for, diversify your portfolio, because should one form of income be interrupted, you need to have multiple, because you never know what's going to happen. So aside from saving up for the unforeseen, but also, the income should and shouldn't stop necessarily just because you're not actively working. So I'm a big preacher of passive income as well.
All right, so let's go there, because I've been dying to find out, in your career. I mean, it's already a long career, and congratulations. I think it was March would have been the 15th anniversary of your album release. Am I right?
Wow, I'm impressed that you know that. Yes, so I did release my debut album in 2005. Can you believe it?
2005 is an auspicious year. That was when I launched my company, and I guess all great things happened in 2005. So well done.
Well, there you go. So cheers to you too as well.
Thank you. So in the entertainment industry, one thing you're never going to get used to, I guess, is a regular monthly check paid to you by some other boss somewhere in some other head office. It's all about you and the work that you put in and the time and the effort. But I guess what that means, if I had to guess, because I don't know, that also means that there are going to be times when income is great and there are going to be times when there is no income, but maybe there are still costs. How do you manage that?
Warren, that's exactly it. I figured out very early on that entertainment is very short-lived. It's not how talented or how hardworking you are. It's more how popular you are, if the market is even interested in you, whether it's music, whether it's a radio slot, only the most popular will secure slots. Television, you have to be good looking or the market has to respond to you. There's all these other determining factors which have little to do with your hard work or determination. In other words, you can work as hard as you want, Warren, but if nobody likes you, you're not going to get the gig. You know what I mean? So once I figured that out, the first thing I tried to do was to have as many different income streams as possible. So while I was releasing my music, I was also a budding television presenter. I started off in Channel O. I had finished my sound engineering, so I I tried to get into radio as well. But also I was gigging. I was trying to get into speaking, emceeing, whatever I could, because I figured out that if the one stops, you have to have something to fall back on. You need to have a backup plan. Look, my parents were preaching my whole life to have a backup plan. Of course, they wanted me to pursue something academic, so I wasn't that way inclined. But as a creative, I decided to say, how wide can I cast my net? And I think that has not only served me well, but as I've gotten older, I've also ventured to outside of entertainment, so I served on the board of a flight center for a period, but I've also gotten into property, which is not only my passive income, but it's what's sustaining me now.
So can you tell us more? How do you, is it residential or commercial?
Oh, it's very much residential. So right now, as Warren Buffett said, you should only invest in things you understand. And what I understand most is residential property. So for the last, I would say, 7 or so years, I've amassed a decent property portfolio, which I manage, and was my exit strategy for entertainment, because I am getting a little bit older, but also as my sort of passive income, because I knew, should I retire as an entertainer, we don't have formal employment, so more often than not, we don't have retirement plans from companies or packages that we're going to get. So I then had this idea to get into something passive, and property was it. And it's residential, and so that's kind of how I'm surviving right now that everything else is kind of paused and halted.
Amazing. And you must feel so blessed now that you made that call.
Man, I'm so fortunate that I at least, well, for starters, I'm fortunate that radio is at least considered an essential service, so I at least continue to do radio. We've just gotten permission to continue as a production company, which I happen to co-own, that produces South African Idol, so we can at least proceed there. So I'm blessed that some of what I do, can continue to work, even though the climate has changed. But also, I'm grateful that I had the foresight, if you like, to diversify, and I can at least enjoy some income from my property, even though as a landlord I also have to exercise a bit of humanity with my tenants and appreciate that things have changed for them as well.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's always going to be the thing about being an investor, or dealing with capital is, I think a lot of people who don't deal with money and don't deal with investments have this very strange view of capitalists, as if somehow capitalism on its own is evil and a bad thing, and it's not. I think if you're a human being and you're human about the way you invest and the way that you deal with in your sense your tenants, then there is a way that capital can be a great multiplier. You can build for yourself, your family, but also for those around you. And I think it's such a pity that in South Africa, capitalism's got such a bad name, because I think it's the one thing that can create many more jobs and get many more people out of poverty is social investing in the right way and investing with a conscience. But surely, investing on its own is not an evil thing if you look after everyone around you.
This is the thing. A rapper that I like, Common, he's been posting a lot on social media, and he's been saying, we're people first, we're human beings first, before we're anything else. Warren, I do feel the need to also share something with you, if I may. There's another guy, Dame Dash. Now, Dame Dash, just to give you some background, he used to co-own a record company with Jay-Z, right? So Dame Dash is a little bit of a maverick, and he's a wild guy. 80% of what he says is rubbish, but every now and again he says something smart. And he did an interview on radio maybe some 3, if not 4 years ago, and he was arguing with the presenter about what it means to be a boss, right? And his definition of a boss was, can you leave this to your kids? and it was really driving the point. Can you leave it to your kids? And the reason I mention that is because it really challenged me about everything I'm doing. Sure, I may host idols, I may have a radio show, I may get to host very cool gigs and events, but can I give that to my kids? And the answer is, I cannot. I am replaceable. I report to somebody. So I then decided to get into some kind of business or venture that I can give to my kids. And for me, property made perfect sense, because should, God forbid, something happen to me, I can leave this to my kids. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to give you the background story of how I got to thinking about, can you leave this to your kids?
And that's amazing. It takes one not argument, but one piece of insight at the right time to change direction, and that obviously landed for you, which is power.
100%, and this is why I'm so fond of engaging in these kind of conversations, because you will always leave with something that'll spark an idea in your mind, which is why I started following you on the social media, when I realized that, man, you are speaking the kind of content that I want to consume regularly. So on whatever platform it is, I think information, we live in the info age. I think information is freely available. If you expose yourself to it, you get as much as you can. I've also started studying, by the way. I completed a property and investment course recently. I got a certificate for that, and I've just signed up now for tax law, because that's another thing I want to figure out.
And I think that's I guess it's a powerful point to understand when you're talking about, for example, property investing. It's a case of being as legal but as efficient as you possibly can to make sure that, yes, you pay your taxes that you're supposed to pay, but that you also don't overpay at the wrong time, and use all the proper legal structures you can to be as tax efficient as possible, to build that capital to leave more behind for your kids one day.
100% correct. I was reading Robert Kiyosaki's book, and what was frustrating me most about it was he kept referring to the American tax laws, and so I couldn't quite connect with it. So for me, for property to make absolute sense, you have to understand the entire ecosystem around it, and tax is a big part of it. So that's why I'm just empowering myself so that going forward, I can just make smarter decisions.
It's a great lesson for everybody out there. I mean, I think, if I think about the entertainment industry, it's very similar to me to the professional sports industry. The moment you appreciate that your career has a lifespan and you're going to have to do something after that, that's probably the point where people take learning and studying seriously. And even if it's not for a career advancement in terms of a corporate career, it's about understanding and growing yourself and your own knowledge.
100%, Warren, and it'll be so irresponsible to see our peers, as somebody who's in entertainment and following lots of entertainers and seeing how it generally goes. It would be so irresponsible to not learn. So many of my peers, sadly, either die paupers, or I see veterans, and every now and again we have to get together and raise funds so we can feed this person. And I would hate to sit there and blindly follow on and not having learned from it, So I also just try and learn from those who have come before me to say, I see the pattern that it has a lifespan. So I'm nearly 40 now. Which means I'm near the end of my entertainment career potentially. It's much like sports, You could be a young guy in the streets, but as far as the sports field is concerned, you are considered old. So I think it's irresponsible to not prepare or not have some kind of plan or exit strategy.
Brilliant. So now it's time for confession. What's your biggest financial weakness?
Look, like anybody, I also like what I like. I like to travel, and I have my dream car at the moment, which now that we have this outbreak, it was probably the poorest timing. But that is also the spice of life. It wouldn't be financial freedom if you didn't get to do the things that you love. So part of it all, absolutely, we are thinking about the future. We are saving for a rainy day. I get all that, and we are trying to leave a legacy. I do get all that. But Warren, we also can't be miserable. We have to live. If, my dad, we once took a trip to Cape Town. We were kids, him, my brother, and I. And I remember he was uncomfortable because I think he had on a suit or something. And he walked into a store. He saw what a mannequin was wearing. And he bought everything from head to toe, right? And he came out wearing it. And as a kid, that was the coolest thing I had ever seen. And I said to myself, one day when I'm bigger, I'm going to walk into a store, pick on everything, put it on and wear it. And look, that's not to say let's be irresponsible and splurge, but it is to say you must also enjoy it. That's the spice of life. As far as we know, we get to do this once, right? So while you're here, you must also enjoy it.
I think that's a power point. It's not about kind of living in the smallest little place possible and living like a hermit and not spending any money. It's about saving responsibly, investing responsibly, and then spending responsibly, and giving yourself the freedom to spend, but in balance and with responsibility. There's nothing wrong with that at all. So I think it's a great point.
I use milestones in my own life. I, for instance, would say to myself, if I can get to 5 properties, then I'm gonna buy my dream car. Then if I can get another, say, 2 properties, then I'm gonna go take my family on holiday. Then if I can get to 10 so for me, I use a reward system, where I know at the ends of it, I also get to reward myself, and then I can be irresponsible with a clear conscience.
Great point. Yeah. Which actually means it is responsible, I guess. So in the South African context, one of the things that we see a lot is people struggling with financial responsibility for a family. And I guess for you're a dad, but in the South African context, I guess it doesn't apply to you specifically. A lot of us are responsible for our parents and our potentially our siblings or our cousins. What's your advice to people who are grappling with that?
Warren, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was trying to explain to somebody that we are all affected differently because our circumstances and situations are very different. So it's all good and well to speak about all these ideal financial practices and habits and so on, but we have to appreciate that our backgrounds and set of circumstances are so different. So what works for me may be meaningless to somebody who still has to support a family. So I'm grateful in that my folks were professionals, and I suppose they empowered me to build my own life without having to serve as theirs. So having said all that, I do say any advice one gives or takes, we should always consider that we have a different set of circumstances. So it's difficult to speak for somebody who still has all those responsibilities, and in fact it would just be irresponsible to try and advise because I don't know that I don't have that particular set of challenges.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. To me, one of the things I always say to especially young professionals, and especially in South Africa, young black professionals who are bearing that burden, because the broader family are so proud of them that they might be the first in their generation to go to university, first in their generation to go and work in a corporate, etc. That they need to share information with their family, as well as the financial benefits of being employed, because I think a lot of the time, if your parents didn't have a background in money, then they just believe that the moment you've got a big job working at a big company, that money is almost limitless. And I think the moment that happens, that it puts incredible burden on the person working. And to me, the only way to manage that is to play open cards and say, look, this is what comes in. This is where the money goes for tax, and this is the rent, etc. And this is what I've got left to eat with and to live on, and this is how much I can share with my family. And I think that, so you're right. Perhaps we need to understand we all come from different place, but if you are in that position, at least playing open cards with your family is a great start. I think that make them part of the solution, not just part of the problem.
Sure, I think that's solid advice, Warren, and I absolutely agree with you.
So we're starting to run out of time, and I really have two questions I really want to ask you. And the first one is, to me, South Africa, our banking system is really good at offering debt to people that earn income, and they make it really easy to pile up that debt. What's your view on debt? I mean, if you're buying properties, I guess you're dealing with banks and you're dealing with debt. Tell us more.
Warren, I used to avoid debt like the plague. I never once had a clothing account. I still don't. I never had a credit card until I had to rent a car one year while I was doing an event. But since then, I have learned that there's good debt, and my property courses also taught me that there's something called positive leverage. So with this particular understanding, I know that you can make debt work for you to help you sort of grow your assets and leverage it, especially if I suppose specifically with property. So my relationship with debt is a little bit better if I understand good debt, which I do. Everything else, I buy cash. Jay-Z says if you can't buy two, you can't afford it. So every other thing I try and buy cash when I can and save up for it. Otherwise, for my properties, for instance, I make use of good debt where I leverage versus the income that I make.
I think that's such a great way to look at it. Anytime you're borrowing money to buy clothes or stuff or phones or anything like that, anything that's not going to grow in value or give you an income stream one day, that's bad debt. And if you are going to borrow and you can do it carefully to buy things that are going to give you an income or to grow faster than inflation, then that's good debt. And I think for me, I always talk about debt as a weapon of wealth destruction. And I think it can be really helpful, but it can also hurt you if you just spend it recklessly and treat it badly.
Absolutely. I think it also helps if you're a miser. I'm a miser of note. And, listen, I won't spend unless I absolutely have to. So, I'm quite frugal in my own sort of life anyways, But as you say, debt, I think more than anything, is a tool depending on how we use it.
And then my last question is, if you could give the 19-year-old ProVerb some advice now that you're approaching 40, what would that advice be?
Oh my gosh, that's always an interesting one. Hey, Warren, I spent a lot of time being very hard on myself, because my parents were big achievers. My dad is a medical doctor. My late mom was a professor at the university, and these were very academic folk. So I always felt a sense of underachievement. Because I was a creative and I went the entertainment route, and I always thought I always kind of had this cloud of not regret, but always wishing I had done more with my life. But now that I'm near 40 and I look back at it, I'm actually proud of myself, of what I've done, of where I am. And so I would say to the 19-year-old, relax, dude, you're doing okay. You're going to turn out just fine. Relax. You're being hard on yourself more than you have to be. your mistakes are going to serve you in the future. So make them, hold your head up high, and just keep going. You turn out okay. That's what I would say to my 19-year-old self. I feel like I need therapy now.
That's a power message. I think I'm going to say it to myself. Even at approaching 45, it's a great lesson for us all. Thanks so much for joining us. It's been amazing to have you, and I think a lot of people are going to get some great value out of what you were willing to share. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I think thank you as well for having these conversations. It's really important because, you know, when you speak, you're only repeating what you know, but when you engage with others, you're bound to pick up some insights. So I really do appreciate it as well. I love engaging with others, you know, and I've picked up some lessons myself and nuggets. So thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Honest Money. If you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to me on Twitter. My handle is @WarrenIngram. Don't forget to subscribe. We're on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Chat soon. Honest Money was proudly brought to you by OutSurance. Got any questions about how much life cover you need? Try the handy life insurance calculator at outsurance.co.za. Want to discuss more? Remember, a friendly consultant is waiting to talk to you. Simply SMS LIFE to 30165 for a callback. OutSurance. You always get something out. OutSurance Life is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's apply. 50 cents per SMS.